Roman Empire ruled the Balkans for half a millennium. 500 years of roads, taxes, law, and Latin. Imperial cities rose. Legions drilled. Emperors were born in Balkan soil. But when scientists opened the graves, the bloodline of Rome was missing. Geneticists expected to find the signature of Italic men, Y chromosome R1b, U152, common across the Italian peninsula, dominant in the Roman military class. But in over 100 sequenced individuals from Roman-era Balkan sites, like Viminatium, that marker was virtually non-existent, not diluted, absent. The Balkans, long believed to be Rome's frontier province, saturated with its people and power, instead reveals something else. A foreign pulse running through the ancient bones. Genome-wide sequencing exposed dominant ancestry not from Rome, but from Western Anatolia, modern-day Turkey. One grave told it all. An elite male burial, decked in Roman funerary wealth, buried beside a woman. His DNA was local Balkan. Hers, Anatolian. This wasn't a Roman colonial couple. This was internal migration within the empire. A family, forged not in conquest, but in convergence. It rewrites everything we thought we knew. Because while Roman architecture towered over the Balkans, it was Anatolian DNA that endured. It left a 23% genetic imprint into the medieval period, a legacy that survives in modern Balkan populations. Rome's laws crumbled. Its roads collapsed. But the migrants from Asia Minor stayed. So the question isn't just, where's Rome in the DNA? It's far more unsettling. Whose empire was this really? And just as that answer begins to form, the evidence shifts again. In the next grave over, a new anomaly appears. A boy no older than 16, buried like a Roman, but his DNA, 100% East African. Childhood diet, seafood. Burial gift, a lamp bearing Jupiter's eagle. What was an African teenager doing in a Balkan graveyard under Roman rule? This isn't history. This is a genetic mystery buried beneath the empire, and we're just getting started. That single question forces us to reevaluate everything, because if African blood reached the Danube, what else passed through unnoticed? The real shock isn't just what Rome didn't leave behind, it's what arrived in its place. Genome-wide sequencing from 1st to 3rd century CE Balkan graves, especially from the Roman frontier city of Viminatium, revealed something no historian had predicted. A wave, not a trickle, of Western Anatolian DNA, deep and permanent, running through the bones of the local population. This wasn't military. This wasn't conquest. This was settlement, measured not in monuments, but in mitochondria. One grave unlocks the truth. A man of Balkan Iron Age ancestry, laid to rest with full Roman rites. Next to him, a woman. Her genetic profile, unmistakably Anatolian. Not neighbors. Not captives. Family. We were told that Roman power flowed from Italy outward. But this couple, their chromosomes, tell us the opposite. The empire was pulling people inward. From the east. From the Aegean. From lands older than Rome itself. The Olalde et al. 2023 study places this Anatolian ancestry at a consistent 23% presence in medieval Balkan genomes. That's centuries of demographic impact. It wasn't erased. It became part of the modern gene pool. And it wasn't limited to the Balkans. Similar surges of Anatolian ancestry appear in Rome during this period. The capital and the frontier, both reshaped by migration from the east. Not Italianizing the provinces, Easternizing the empire. Historians once called the Balkans Rome's edge. But genetically it was a gateway, a meeting point between local Iron Age lineages and a rising Anatolian current that would outlast emperors, borders, even language. But the story doesn't stop at Anatolia, because buried in the same cemetery, under the same imperial sky, was a boy, 16 years old, a full Roman burial, and a genome from East Africa. Next, we follow his journey. A life cut short, a migration that should never have happened, yet somehow did. Buried in a Roman necropolis in what is now Serbia, his body lay still, unremarkable at first. But inside his teeth, inside the bones themselves, a story waited. One so out of place, so biologically impossible, it froze the research team in disbelief. He was just a boy. 16, maybe 17. But his DNA? 100% East African. Not mixed. Not partially. A direct line. Not from North Africa. Not from Egypt, but further. Down past the Nile. Possibly Sudan. Possibly even beyond. And the story didn't stop at genes. Isotopic analysis of his teeth, specifically the oxygen and strontium values, revealed something else. His childhood diet was rich in seafood. Not river fish. Not Balkan grains. Ocean protein. Likely from a coastal upbringing, somewhere near the Red Sea. That boy lived his early years thousands of kilometers away. Across deserts. Across empires. Yet somehow, he was buried in the Balkans, among Roman citizens, in a formal grave, with a Roman oil lamp beside him, marked with Jupiter's eagle. No name. No record. Just evidence. Was he a slave, captured and relocated? A soldier's son? A diplomat's page? Or something more invisible? A traveler caught in the web of Rome's vast internal migration system? His presence forces a reckoning. Rome wasn't just a Mediterranean empire. It was intercontinental, and its borders, genetic, cultural, and physical, were wide open in ways we've barely begun to grasp. And he wasn't alone. Multiple individuals with partial or full North African ancestry have now been found in Balkan Roman graves, proving this wasn't an accident. It was a pattern, a hidden demographic pulse, flowing across continents, while history looked the other way. But just as these far-flung migrants reached the Balkans, another wave approached, not from the south, but from the north, from the grasslands, the rivers, the steppe, and their skulls. They didn't look Roman. They were shaped, stretched, like weapons of war, buried not just with weapons, but as weapons. Their heads didn't form naturally. They were forced, pressed into narrow, alien shapes, elongated, high, almost inhuman. This wasn't a medical deformity. It was a message. You could see them from across the battlefield, warriors from the steppe, Huns, Sarmatians, Alans, maybe others. Between 250 and 550 CE, these nomadic groups swept through the Balkans like a moving shadow, not just raiding, but arriving, and their skulls with a signal, a cultural code, a declaration of identity through bone. And they didn't come alone. The genomes from this period, pulled from graves across Serbia and Croatia, show strange patterns. Some match Central European ancestry, others, pure Pontic Kazakh steppe, and many, a blend, a mix of tribes, lineages, languages, fused not by borders, but by survival. They buried their dead with coins from Rome, swords from Germania, beads from the East. Multi-ethnic armies, confederations of the displaced. The steppe didn't march into the Balkans with one name. It came as many. But here's the twist. By the time the 7th century dawns, these lineages are gone, vanished from the genetic record. The distinctive steppe ancestry, the one that surged in the 4th and 5th centuries, fades to almost zero. Archaeologically, their imprint is loud. Genetically, it becomes a whisper. They came. They collided with Rome. And they disappeared. Why? Was it a disease? Assimilation? A battlefield lost? No one knows. But one thing's clear. This was the fracture point. The empire couldn't hold. The migrants couldn't stay. And the Balkans were left wide open. And into that vacuum, into that silence, came something else. Not a raid, not a wave, but a migration so massive, it rewired the future. Next, the Slavs arrive, and the DNA of the Balkans changes forever. It didn't happen in a single year, or even a single war. It was slow, relentless, and permanent. After the collapse of Rome and the fading roar of the steppe nomads, a quiet force began to seep into the Balkans from the northeast. Not legions, not conquerors, families. They came from the lands we now call Ukraine, Belarus, and Western Russia, speaking Slavic languages, carrying tools, livestock, children. The archaeogenetic evidence shows their impact wasn't symbolic. It was biological. By the time we reach the 8th century, the genomes from Serbia, Croatia, Bosnia, even parts of Greece and Romania, begin to shift. Massively. Between 30 and 60% of modern Balkan DNA comes from this migration wave. It wasn't a replacement, but it was a rewiring. A genetic reset that reshaped the future of Southeast Europe. And it wasn't violent. Not in the way popular myths imagine. These weren't mounted raiders torching cities. These were settlement patterns, visible in cemeteries. Men, yes, but also women and children. Generations moving together, farming, building, staying. Their arrival blurs everything we thought we knew. Because even in places where Slavic languages aren't spoken today, the genes are there. Modern Greeks, as much as 1/3 Slavic ancestry. Romanians, similar numbers. That's the twist. Borders moved. Languages changed. Religions shifted. But the DNA remained. The Slavs didn't just move into a political void. They moved into a genetic vacuum and filled it. And from that point on, the Balkans were no longer a crossroads between East and West. They had become something new. But deep below that Slavic layer, older than Cyrillic, older than Byzantium, there's something still breathing, something almost forgotten. Because long before the Slavs arrived, other people had already planted roots. And their genetic shadow is still here, just buried deeper. Next, the first farmers of Europe returned to the surface. Long before Slavs rewrote the map, before Rome, before bronze, even before written myth, another migration crossed into the Balkans. But this one didn't come with weapons. It came with seeds. Around 6000 BCE, early Neolithic farmers began moving northwest from Anatolia, crossing the Aegean, following river valleys, entering a land still ruled by hunter-gatherers. They brought with them agriculture and something far more lasting, their DNA. Genomes from Balkan sites, like Lipinski Vir, show the full picture. Some of the earliest farming individuals excavated here were genetically 100% Anatolian. No local admixture, no hybrid blending. These were pioneers, biologically, culturally, agriculturally, stepping into new soil. And the genetic lineages they carried? G2A, E1B1B, haplogroups with deep roots in the Near East, still found today in southern Albanians, Greeks, and Bulgarians. They weren't erased. They were absorbed, preserved, layered into the Balkan gene pool. Even their burial styles, crouched positions, ochre dust, pottery shaped in Eastern forms, tell the same story. These weren't local inventions. They were transplants, signs of a demographic wave that reshaped the region long before history began. The surprise? This wasn't slow diffusion. This was a full-scale replacement. In many Neolithic genomes, local Mesolithic hunter-gatherer ancestry is almost invisible. Farming didn't spread by imitation. It spread with people. And those people didn't leave. You can still find their signal in the southern Balkans, a quiet echo beneath Slavic, Roman, even Greek layers. Not gone, just waiting. But the Neolithic didn't just bring food. It brought numbers, stability, growth. And for those already living in the Balkans, the foragers, the wanderers, it brought something else, a threat. Because what started as farming was about to become conquered. Next, the Bronze Age crashes in. And with it, the warriors from the steppe. They didn't walk. They rode. Around 3000 BCE, a new force surged across the Balkan plains from the endless grasslands of the Pontic-Caspian steppe. Horse riders, cattle herders, warrior herdsmen from the Amnea culture, armed not with bronze at first, but with speed, power, and something far more enduring, language. This wave didn't just bring new weapons or burial styles. It brought the roots of Indo-European speech, the ancestors of Slavic, Albanian, Greek, the voices we still speak with today. And under that language, a genetic transformation. The steppe newcomers carried powerful Y chromosome markers, R1A, R1B, still dominant in Balkan populations. But what happened next wasn't simple invasion. It was fusion. Anatolian farmers, Balkan hunter-gatherers, steppe herders, merging. And from this three-way blend, something new began to form. The deep ancestral profile of Illyrians, Thracians, Proto-Albanians. The cultural memory of tribes long gone, still encoded in Balkan blood. The genetic evidence is sharp. Mitochondrial DNA from Bronze Age Thracian burials places them between early Neolithic farmers and later steppe arrivals. Genetically intermediate, the very definition of convergence. This was no pure line. No single tribe, but a tangled braid, one strand for each ancient source. Languages may have split them, but their genomes told one story. A story that still lives in modern Serbs, Croats, Montenegrins, Bulgarians, even non-Slavic Albanians. Because the deeper you go into their ancestry, the more that Bronze Age collision still echoes. 3 bloodlines, 1 body. That was the Balkans. But this harmony wouldn't last, because from the ashes of collapsed kingdoms, a new empire would rise, not from the past, but from the east. And it would test this genetic unity through faith, fire, and centuries of foreign rule. When the Ottomans swept into the Balkans in the 14th century, they didn't just bring armies. They brought a new world, new script, new gods, new laws. Entire populations shifted, not by movement, but by allegiance. Churches became mosques. Tribes became Timars. Sons became janissaries. And yet, something didn't move at all. For centuries, it was assumed that Ottoman domination must have changed the DNA of the region. That Turkish blood flooded in. That Islamization meant replacement. But when researchers ran the identity by descent models, when they pulled genomes from across Bosniak, Serbian, Croatian populations, they found something unexpected. Almost nothing changed. Modern Bosniaks, despite centuries under Islamic rule, remain genetically identical to Orthodox Serbs and Catholic Croats. The differences are cultural, linguistic, religious, but not ancestral. Even among Balkan Muslims, the average Turkic ancestry measures under 1%, roughly 0.6% to be exact. A faint signal, like smoke from a fire that never fully caught. The Ottomans ruled, but the blood of the Balkans, Bronze Age, Neolithic, steppe remained. In the bones, in the fathers, in the unbroken Y chromosome lines, the empire left barely a mark. 1,000 mosques could rise, but the DNA held its ground. And so, for all the flags, the battles, the burned villages, the genetic map of the Balkans stayed almost untouched. Faith divided them. Language shifted. But under the skin, they were still the same. Same mothers, same fathers, same past, disguised in different prayers. But this revelation leads us to the question no nation wants answered. If conquest couldn't erase old ancestry, if religion didn't change the genes, then who truly are the modern Balkans? The answer is in the final sequences, and it may shake everything, including identity itself. Because when scientists compared the genomes of modern-day Serbs, Croats, and Bosniaks, across regions, across faiths, they expected difference, divides, echoes of centuries of war, religion, and national pride. But what they found was unity. The genetic distances between these groups? Microscopic. Nearly identical profiles, built from the same deep layers. Neolithic farmer, steppe rider, Bronze Age mixer. Even the rare East African and Anatolian traces? Shared. Islam didn't divide the genome. Neither did Orthodoxy or Catholicism. Beneath those flags, one body. And yet, not all groups blended the same. Modern Albanians stand slightly apart, not because they are separate, but because they held a continuity others lost. Their genetic profile forms a tight cluster, distinguishable from Slavs, not by exclusion, but by preservation. Paleo-Balkan, possibly Illyrian, the last living echo of a vanished world. Greeks show something different. A bridge. Their genomes span the Balkans and Anatolia, linking Europe and Asia, not splitting them. The overlap is real, measurable. From early farmers to imperial Romans, to Byzantines who ruled both sides of the Aegean. One land, many flags, but under the microscope, not many bodies. Just one shared ancestry. In the end, every map is temporary. Every language can change. Even religions rise and fall. But your DNA, it remembers. And in the Balkans, it remembers everything. Rome, Anatolia, the steppe, the Slavs, even the ghosts of Lipensky Vir. We speak in different tongues, pray in different ways. But ourselves, they whisper the same song, one carried through 10,000 years of survival, conflict, love, and migration. So what is Balkan identity? It's not one thing. It's everything. But this story isn't finished. Because deep under the harbors of the Aegean, and along the edge of the Black Sea. New DNA is rising from the mud, and it may force us, all of us, to start this journey again from the beginning.